Awesome. Thanks, Adrian. Hi, everyone. Lovely to see you all. Happy afternoon. Always a little tough to go after lunch because everyone's a little bit of in a coma. So really excited to see you all. Thanks for having us. I'm Jordan Brooks. I am a senior advisor and campaign director at More Perfect. More Perfect is an entity that has really come together with an enormous coalition, including 34 presidential centers and libraries, including our good friends at the Ford and Carter Centers, to really come together across the democracy community to find how we can come together on 5 democracy goals for the future and the sustainability of democracy in this country. I'm going to quickly go through them, and then we're going to talk about the 4th one, which is why we're here. So, number 1 is universal civic learning. Number 2 is national service and volunteering and increasing that in this country. Number 3 is bridging divides. Number 4 is trusted elections and more representative government. Put a pin in that one because that's what we're talking about. And number 5 is access to trusted news and information. And so More Perfect is really here to help build those coalitions, to move those partnerships forward and really make sure that we are working, across sectors to think about how we can really strengthen and increase the work for our democracy for the future. So that's a little bit about More Perfect. But I wanted to say, we've heard on trusted elections from folks who are working in the media, from elected officials, from a whole host of different sectors of folks. And I think what really like to think about at More Perfect are there other sectors we should be making sure are really working on this democracy? And 2 of our favorite partners and friends are from the veterans community, because the veterans community we know is very trusted, and the military families community and the military community writ large trusted across a whole host of different issues. And these 2 are working on elections as we lead into the big 54 days from now election that we have in 2024. So I'm going to have them introduce themselves really quick, and then I have a few questions for them. But then we really want to hear from you all. What questions you have about the military community and how they can be really, really great examples for how other communities can do some of this work. So I'm going to turn it over to Ellen first, who is the executive director and CEO. Is that your actual title? Yeah. Of We the Veterans. Ellen, will you introduce yourself really quickly?
Yeah. So Ellen Gustafson, organization, the parent organization is called We the Veterans and Military Families. And we are the creators of a coalition called the Vet the Vote Coalition, of which More Perfect and Blue Star Families are partners of ours. The Vet the Vote Coalition was founded in 2022 with a very simple idea that America very publicly had a shortage of poll workers leading up to the 2022 midterms, but also a crisis of confidence in the elections. And we saw an opportunity to very directly recruit veterans and military family members through the existing and very well-networked structure that is our community of organizations to be those poll workers and to fill the gap. So in 2022, the numbers we were hearing were that there was around 120,000 poll worker deficit across the country. And through our partners, which is over 25 veteran and military family organizations, the NFL, and most recently NASCAR, we in 2022 recruited 63,500 just from the veteran and military family community. So we filled half of America's shortfall. And we very publicly and very frequently talked about that incredible showing of veterans and military family members at the polls. And we've done even more for 2024, which I'll talk about later, but that's just a little teaser on who we are.
So thanks, Ellen. Incredible work that We the Veterans is doing. Our other folks here are the Blue Star Families, represented by Ryan Callahan, who's the Executive Vice President of Digital Innovation. Ryan, you want to introduce yourself and Blue Star a little bit?
Thank you. Yes, Ryan Callahan here. I've been working at Blue Star Families for the last year, and mostly on the issue of bridging the civ-mil divide. So making sure that military families are connected to their civilian counterparts. Every year in this country, 600,000 military families move into new communities, and that brings all different issues and challenges that we're trying to bridge the divide to make sure that their civilian counterparts are aware of these issues. So we've been working with Vet the Vote on making sure that our constituency really knows of these opportunities to become poll workers. So excited to dive into that today.
I'm also a military family who moved this summer. So plus wanting that incredible need that we have.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Ellen, you alluded to this a little bit when you introduced We the Veterans, but the poll worker recruitment work is central to what you all are doing. Tell me a little bit about the strategic vision of that, how it's going right now, what you're seeing in this election season, and how veterans and military families are particularly diving into that work.
Yeah, thanks. So, as we said in 2022, we had a raging success getting to this incredible population. So much so, actually, that we were working at the time through a great recruiting platform called Power the Polls, and we skewed their data to be older, whiter, and more male. And I bring that up because we believed that in solving the crisis of confidence in our election, that was exactly the numbers we were looking for from the demographic we were looking for. We were, very jointly a campaign to just bring people into the system who distrusted the system from outside. As a military family member, I can say very directly that it's frustrating when you hear people with absolutely no military background at all critiquing the military. I know most people in my community feel that way, and I feel the exact same way about the elections. If you haven't been involved in the actual election process, then taking pot shots on Facebook isn't really all that productive, and your opinion doesn't actually matter as much because you haven't done the work, right? And that's how I will say that very directly as a patriotic American military family member. Looking forward to 2024, though, after our great success in 2022, we saw an opportunity for a little bit of an open aperture. One was we want to make sure we had more, right? We want more military family members and veterans in the system. Two is we want to make sure that America knows that we have all these people in the system. And three is that even if you can't become a poll worker as a veteran or military family member, you should know. And I say that because in our country, we kind of assign a real breadth of knowledge about civics and our government and our democracy and our institutions to everyone connected to the military. People assume, well, if you're a veteran or if you're connected to the military, you must know how the whole government works. And of course, any person that knows that that's not true. Any military member knows that that's not true. You do know a certain part of the government very well, but it doesn't necessarily mean expand to knowing how the elections work, just because you served. But we think you should, and what a great opportunity. So the way we looked forward to this coming election and what we've done so far is, number one, continue our recruitment. In 2024, we have already recruited 141,000 veterans and military family members to be poll workers. So that's out of a total number of 1 million needed. We are a very significant chunk, and we will continue to recruit all the way through election day for all the regions that are needed, the states that are needed, the jurisdictions that are needed. Number two, we have been very publicly talking about it. We have PSAs with the NFL. We had a car, a Vet the Vote car, wrapped at NASCAR at the Atlanta International Speedway 2 weeks ago. We are putting out PSAs, and I have actually today I have an op-ed in the Detroit News. If you want to pick it up, that was just published today about this incredible connection between military families, veterans, and the need for poll workers. And so we are really publicizing this as an incredible opportunity for America to get back to the fundamental trust. We call it the veteran and military family fairy dust, putting that over our election system and using it to build trust. And the third is that we have had events in states across the country from New Hampshire, South Carolina, Arizona, Nevada, Michigan. We have hosted events that are literally just to educate military family members and veterans about how their elections work. Now, everyone in this room knows that according to the Constitution, elections are left up to the state, and that is a cause for malinformation, and confusion, but it doesn't have to be. So we have hosted events where veterans, through our partnerships, have set up literally mock polling locations and invited their fellow veterans, the media, military family members to walk through and ask questions. Ask the poll workers what they actually do, what the process is behind the scenes. And we have found it to be super high impact to just say, here's the curtain's open, come ask. Our data has shown that from 2022, those who served, 96% said they would recommend it to their fellow veterans, military family members. 93% said they would serve again. And over 80% said it vastly increased their trust in the American institution of elections. So we know we're having a high impact. We invite more veterans and military families to sign up. And we hope America knows that that's who's there when you go to the polls.
Thanks, Ellen. Those are huge numbers. You don't get numbers like that in most of the things we do in Democracy Works. So that's really exciting. And I want to come back to some of the best practices you guys have seen on that in a minute, but I also want to ask Ryan. So Blue Star Families, obviously really trying to, as you mentioned, bridge the divide between the civilian and military community, really thinking about how, veterans and military families can be good messengers to that community as well, but also how we can help to figure out how to, how all of us who are not military connected can understand that community better. So tell us what Blue Star Families does in that as it relates to elections, and how are you thinking about the messengers on both sides, really? How are you educating the civilian community on veterans as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we built an online platform called the Blue Star Neighborhood. And in the neighborhood, everyone's welcome to come in. So it's not just military and veteran families. Your civilian counterparts are welcome to come in and join to realize, what military life entails. So through the neighborhood, we have over 300,000 members at Blue Star Families, and we try to make them, know that these opportunities of poll working and registration is available and readily available to them online. So YouGov actually did a poll earlier this year, and 90% of Americans have a high affinity of trust towards military families. It was the highest, most trusted institution in our country. It was, higher than the media, higher than police officers, higher than even the service members who make up those, the military institution itself. So it's so important, and it's such a great parallel to make sure that we trust elections, because when military families are the poll workers and they are considered the highest, most trusted institution, then it increases trust in the outcomes. So that's one way. The other thing that we're doing online is making sure that we're stopping the spread of disinformation. So we're working with the Carter Center, and the Carter Center with Clemson University actually started a really cool online quiz. It's called spotthetroll.org. And what you can do is you can go online and scroll through fake posts and try to see who is a bot and who's not. And we as Americans, are susceptible, unfortunately, because of AI and the increase in technology, to the spread of disinformation. But this quiz is a great way to make sure that that not always is someone on the other end of that keyboard, and sometimes there's bots.
Thanks, Ryan. I want to double click a little bit on this disinformation piece, because obviously that's a huge part of the trust in elections problem that we're having in this country, and also the partisan divide. The military family and veterans community is a microcosm of the rest of the country. And I think Ellen was saying this a little bit earlier, when when you sit down with a veteran and military community family, you can get really, really far into a conversation without ever talking about politics, which I think is great. And Ellen said earlier, rare. So I'm curious about, Ellen, particularly. Blue Star Families has been working on disinformation since the beginning of your existence, or sorry, We the Veterans has been working on that since the beginning of your existence. Tell me what the best practices are that you're seeing on the ground for combating the disinformation with the veterans community on elections.
Yeah, what's been we believe what's most high impact, first of all, is just to invite people in, and I think we a lot of language that's been politicized around our elections, our the fact that we are both a constitutional republic and a democratically elected set of leaders. I think we've allowed the language to get confused. And we've allowed sort of the tail to wag the dog in some of those instances, because people are busy just trying to run elections and do their jobs. But so what we found super high impact, this idea that getting in the game is the only way to really have a credible voice. We've also had to push back very deeply on the misinformation linking the job of being a poll watcher with being a poll worker. And we've talked very directly about that someone inviting you to be a poll watcher is a partisan. Doesn't matter what side they're on. They want you to do a partisan job. And if they're specifically talking about a veteran group coming in to be a poll watcher, and they bring anything up about arms or defense, then they are looking to militarize the polls. And as a group of people who have been connected to elections overseas that are militarized, We know we don't want that. I mean, anyone who has served, in our community, in places where elections are scary and dangerous, does not want that to happen in America. And we have a very strong voice as a community in reminding people of that. So that's a very important piece of disinformation that we are looking to overcome. But I think the last is that it is patriotism to go and do this job in the same way as is patriotism to serve in the military. Very similar. Obviously, it's easier to be a poll worker. Absolutely no doubt in that. But you are still volunteering and you get paid. It's very similar. You volunteer to serve in the military and yet you will get paid. You volunteer to serve as a poll worker, you will get paid to train and you will get paid to do the job. So we have to, I think, reframe the idea of who gets thanked for their service. And the way we do that often is by saying, look, when you are a veteran or military family member who is a poll worker, you should be thanked for your service twice. And that is a norm that we are trying to embed in the discussion about our community being poll workers, which is that, we're just saying thanks for your service twice. You served once, you're now serving again, and you may continue to serve. The last thing that's kind of a nice way to combat disinformation about elections, and I encourage anyone in the election space to use this, is a little just demographic note, because a lot of Americans know the demographic idea that poll workers are mostly little old ladies. I don't know if they're little or not, so I'm not making a judgment about size, but they're old ladies. Okay. That's what the data shows. And we would like to remind America that the vast majority demographically of those old ladies are probably married to Vietnam veterans. And so that's just a numbers game, guys. And so we would like to include the old ladies in our cohort of veteran and military family members, because they are. So we think the numbers are way higher than our 140,000 of the 1 million. We think they're a much more significant portion. So again, when you are maligning elections, and those include the old ladies, you are likely maligning a military or veteran family member, and we don't like that.
Definitely not. Ryan, a little bit, I'm curious about some of the lessons that you've seen from the neighborhood and some of the things that you guys have been working on some of the conversations that you're seeing between veterans and military families and the civilian community, and how that bridging divides is actually helping to build trust in our elections.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think what we see, is civil discourse, which is refreshing this time of year. We recently had a Fox News anchor come on and do a Q&A in the neighborhood, and she was commenting after the fact that, I can't believe how civil everyone was, and you don't get that on a lot of other platforms. I think it speaks to our core audience, and our core audience is military spouses. So they're obviously a trusted institution, but I think that they're able to kind of put differences aside and able to have productive conversations about what's going on in our country, because there's that common bond. They have the common bond of a loved one serving in the armed forces. So it's very, it's refreshing to see, and we would love to be able to use that playbook and bring it to other communities.
That's great. I think, obviously we are all so deeply focused on 2024 and what's about to happen. But elections happen in many states every year, every 2 years, every 4 years. Local elections happen all the time. So as you guys are building these different pieces of work right now, but also for the future, what does that infrastructure sort of look like so that it'll stay and continue to have people doing this work for generations to come? And particularly, More Perfect is doing a lot of work around the 250th anniversary of the country. These two are great partners of ours in that. We invite all of you to join us in some of that work, but really thinking about how we can use the 250th birthday to build some really concrete actions for how the country looks in the future. And so I'm thinking about that as I hear, the great infrastructure that these guys are building. So I'm curious about how you think about building that infrastructure for the future.
Well, so two answers to that. One is about the community of individuals who make up the veteran and military family community. And the second is about actually the organizations and the community of organizations. So the first I'll say is that what we have found, and I have an amazing data point. We in 2022, we sent out through the VA a letter that we had helped write, or an article we'd helped write about the opportunity to be a poll worker. And it was very much focused on the opportunity to earn money. And that's, the VA was very happy to send it out. It wasn't about us as an organization or a coalition. It was literally like, hey, veterans, wherever you are, like, you could sign up to do this and earn money. And first of all, we found that people read their VA email, which is amazing. It's a government email that actually people read. So that's way to go, VA. But second of all, we found that in the 12 hours of after that email was sent out, 30,000 veterans signed up to be poll workers. And then in the subsequent couple of days, we got up to 50 just from that, literally that one communique. And so what that shows you is that this is a population of people who really are ready to serve again. And when asked specifically, when told how this connects to their service, when framed as a patriotic opportunity, these are amazing Americans who are willing to step up and raise their hand. And we believe that that's something that can be tied to a lot of other institutions in America. So as an organization, we, the veterans, and our sort of vetted portfolio, Vet the Vote, we're working on a platform called Vet the News, which will be coming soon, highlighting all the veterans who are already actually news reporters out there in across America. We're working on a program to pull more veterans into public service jobs, not just as poll workers, but military spouses and veterans make up great workers at the state and local government. I know from my friend Tina Barton in Michigan alone, there are 100 opportunities to be a clerk, an elections clerk, that the people are not even putting their names out to do the job. What an incredible job for someone who is a military family member or veteran, and to bring the trust that they have innately from their country to these very important jobs that require trust by the community. So that we believe that is an extrapolation, leading into the 250th, but to build up all American institutions that should be trusted and should be validated by people who either know what they're talking about or who trust the people who know what they're talking about. But then the second thing I'll say is we've done an incredible success in engaging the community of organizations that represents military family members and veterans like Blue Star Families in the work of building up trust in our country, our democratic values, our norms, our institutions. We hosted an event last year for the first time at Mount Vernon on Flag Day. And it is my not so subtle attempt to claim Flag Day as a holiday where military families and veterans talk to the rest of the country about what they can do to be of service. I don't want the holiday co-opted by any other political agenda, so I've decided I'm going to co-opt it myself because the American flag is for everyone and everyone should be proud to fly it. And I certainly will call myself a patriot, full stop, and will not be threatened by anyone's politicization of that word. But I think it's something that we as a community can, as Ryan said, like we know how to actually have civil discourse. I know how to drop my kids off at someone's house who votes differently than me and feel zero negativity about it. And I think more Americans can learn from us what that looks like, what that means, and that it doesn't just mean being nice to your neighbors. It actually means serving your neighbors. And that's where you actually become the best version of a citizen that you can.
Flag Day is June 14th, correct? Yeah, I know that because it's my wife's birthday also. Yeah, I think one of the things we're doing well at Blue Star Families is pulse checking our audience and seeing, how they're feeling about certain things. We recently did a civic engagement pulse check. It's going to be released on October 1st about, how military families are feeling about the trust in this upcoming election. Vet the Vote was fantastic. We actually had our most engaged pulse check ever after you guys shared that out. But my applied research team said I could use one, bit of information to kind of plug that of those respondents, it was over 3,100 respondents. 1 out of 5 said that they've already signed up to become poll workers. So it's working, right? And I think we're going to continue to beat the drum that it's working even beyond just Flag Day. But it's exciting.
That's great. I think, we have 15-ish minutes left, and we really wanted to open it up to all of you because I think part of this is some of you may be veterans in the room, some of you may not be, some of you may be the civilian community, but I think we talked about how important it is to ask questions about the community and how this community can also be a really great model for other communities, higher ed, faith, all sorts of other different communities across the country. So I want to open it up to all of you. Yes.
You are.
This is great, really inspiring. Thank you so much. It's such an important question in democracy. There are so many functions that are political for which we place political people. You think about election boards, which are Democrat and Republican. You think about the way redistricting is done. It's done by legislators. the country is starting to figure out new approaches to those core institutions that allow for more trust because they're separated a little bit from the political parties and they are led by trusted people. So I just really encourage you to think, just be ambitious. You already are ambitious and it's so exciting, but be ambitious about the trusted roles you can play. I mean, there will be here in Michigan another independent redistricting commission to draw the lines for the 2030, as there will be in, what is it now, 5 or 6 other states. What a great additional area for that trusted persona to step forward, because it's hard. We as a country have this notion that you're either red or blue. And there are plenty of people who are not, but the media cycles that come up around, say, independent redistricting, which right now has, in most states, is 5 Ds, 5 Rs, and 5 independents. And what you hear in the media is they're not really independents. They're R's in sheep clothing. And it's that component that would be such a valuable one to have the additional trustworthiness that's associated with veterans and the kind of work you guys are doing. So that's not a question. It's just an encouragement.
I love that. I mean, this ties very deeply into, if there's people from the Ford School in here, we are working on a program with an organization called the Dean Summit, which is Deans of Schools of Public Service, to actually try to pull more of our community members through the grad school pipeline of public service and then out into these local community jobs, not just those elected roles, the boards like that, but also just the actual jobs, like the tactical jobs of doing government. Are better if they're done by people who have, first of all, had the experience of working in bipartisan settings. It's called the military. You definitely don't only work with people from one political party in your military role. And so I think that's something that we really see as a big growth opportunity for our community. People, a nice secondary positive externality of that is that it really feels good to be of service in a continued way as a person connected to the military. And that's important for our veteran and military family community too. So reminding people that jobs like that, running for those boards is continuing service, is something that we as a country owe it to ourselves and to our veteran and military family population to really continue to sort of shine a light on, because it really makes people feel good. Anyone you talk to who served in the military will say that. So yeah, thank you for that.
Actually, mine's very similar, but I have a question. Absolutely fantastic, the work you're doing. Congratulations on that. As being trusted messengers, it seems like the focus is working within the military family community for the most part. But how do we get the broader public to know all this great work you're doing? I mean, are you even allowed to have like a little button on there that says I served in the military or anything like that to get the word out?
That's funny. Yeah. So when we first started this thing, we were like, we're going to give everyone who's a Vet the Vote veteran or military family member, we're going to give them a t-shirt to wear. And then we were like, we got way too many people to buy t-shirts for all of them, which is a very good problem to have. And also because rules are different in every state. Like what constitutes a political, it's obviously not political to say vet the vote on it, but we have tried to distribute pins and things like that. But more importantly, what we've asked actually of our community is for them to wear their military insignia, their veteran insignia, not their military uniform, but like their veteran hat or pin or shirt or something like that when they go and serve as a poll worker, because we have so many amazing testimonials on our site, vet.vote, that people have talked about how when they've dealt with a situation where someone's come in, asking hard questions or even being a little bit difficult to deal with as a voter, when a veteran makes the connection and says, listen, I know it's hard, but like, I can tell you from when I was serving overseas in this setting, like this, that immediately kind of calms and cools and kind of resets the conversation. And so we have encouraged our folks to just be as open as possible. But as an organization, in the next couple of months, 2 months, we are going to work as hard as we can to get as many Americans to know what these numbers are. And like I said, we have a partnership with the NFL. We're doing some work with the NBA. We have a partnership with NASCAR, and we are getting the word out as much as we can through these amazing platforms of sports to just tell Americans, when you go vote, a huge number of the people that are helping to process your vote are from this community, the most trusted Americans. So You can question, you should ask questions, but if you really have deep questions, you should show the hell up and do the job. And otherwise, why don't you maybe sit back and say, hey, the people I trust the most in this country who have kept me safe are the ones keeping the ballot safe. I'll just vote and go home and watch what the results are.
Ryan, anything you wanted to mention on that?
Yeah, to kind of piggyback on that, and we have an initiative at Blue Star Families called Do Your Part. So, 1% of our country serves the other 99%, and Do Your Part is an initiative to make sure that the other 99%, recognizes that and kind of steps up. And, there's different ways that we see individuals doing their part, but also corporations doing their part. Like Ford Motor Company has been amazing. They set up what was called a Ford Off-Road Rodeo for military families, where they could experience an off-roading experience that brings the family unit closer together. So it's there's a lot of great people out there who are doing their part, and we're really trying to support positive civic engagement.
Other questions?
Hi.
Hi.
I have a million thoughts going through my mind and a lot of emotions listening to your presentation because I grew up in a military household. I was a combat veteran with disabilities. And for 30 years, I was an election administrator. So it's the
Thank you for your
intersection.
service.
It's the intersection of everything. But I have that prompts a couple of questions. But first, I want to thank you for what you're doing. And I think you're providing a very, very valuable service to military families, to veterans, the military community in general, but also to the larger community of our nation. You've given some really impressive numbers about how many people signed up to be poll workers. I got that email from the VA. Yeah, I did. But there are qualifications sometimes and obstacles that people who sign up may encounter, like declaring a partisanship or pledging allegiance to a political party in order to be assigned. So I'm interested in how you are tracking how many of those people who raised their hand actually got the opportunity to serve. And the other question I really almost hesitate to bring up, but I love to hear that veterans are a trusted community. But my personal experience is not that. And I would like to know where that number comes from, and how do you explore or measure how that goes from a survey response to the way veterans and military members are actually treated and respected. Because there's a perception, and as a left-leaning veteran, I break some stereotypes and I catch some flack for that. And I know a lot of my left-leaning colleagues and friends are suspect of veterans as being having been co-opted, and almost like patriotism has been co-opted by the right and not the left. So anyway, I told you I had a lot of emotions going, and also some curiosity about how effective this is.
First of all, every single thing you said absolutely resonates 1,000%, including with me being a social entrepreneur, co-founding a new organization, and in certain communities feeling like people like immediately look suspicious. I'm an active duty military spouse, and in other communities, what's amazing though is that, and I said this a couple weeks ago at kind of what I just said earlier about this, like there are certain people who immediately like start to question your integrity if you're connected to the military, right? And I would say that is the tendency of that may come from people on the left. I'm not saying it's universal, but and of course those are often also people that have never served or been a part of a military family and seen it up close. There's a tendency for another population of Americans to question the integrity of people who work on elections. And I would say right now in America, that tends to come from the right. And by the way, both of y'all are wrong. So, you know, and if you're not in the game, like literally zip it. And I say that fiery as a military spouse who's dealt with 10 deployments in the last 12 years. And as a mother of military kids who've had their dad gone a lot, like I'm fire about this stuff. And I feel that fire towards my friends in the election community because I think it's the same fire. Like literally, you don't know what you're talking about. Sit down and zip it, or get in the game and actually see what you feel. Right. So I'm modeling your emotion about that. The other thing I will say about your first question is that it's really annoying, but also part of this constitutional setup that we have. And I've tried to use that word as often as possible because it is really not any individual in America or state or whatever. It's literally the Constitution. No one freaking knows who is a veteran in their own roles. No one, no state. I have asked, I will say successfully, I've gotten it questioned in the process of Los Angeles County, Maricopa County, and I think the state of New Jersey, some other small counties asking if people are veterans when they are signing up to be poll workers, like on their internal forms. But it is totally decentralized. So nobody knows. We have the number of people that have signed up to serve, and we believe it is vastly undercounting how many veterans and military spouses are out there serving. So we think our number, 140,000, is a show of immediate support in America today for doing this work. We know many of those people have served. We absolutely know that not all of them are actually out there on the streets because they're in counties or jurisdictions that are not needing people, right? They're not being called back. Maybe they're going to training and they're not being called. But we also know that's a massive undercount of how many people. And we know that having our community on the bench is wildly helpful. I'll give you one very specific example. During the Georgia recount in the 2022 elections, Fulton County, Georgia called us and was like, we need X, I forget what the number was. We just need this last little group and it's like tomorrow. And our list of veterans who signed up through Vet the Vote, veteran military family members who signed up through Vet the Vote in that few zip codes got called. Every one of them showed up. Every one of them did the job. And they had been trained. I don't know if they had even served the first time around, but there was a 100% show for these folks. And that's what our community gets you, right? You say you're going to sign up to serve and you're there. So I do think America does, can understand that maybe not every one of these people is exactly in their exact place, but the number is way undercounting how many are there. And again, going back to the fire that we both feel, like literally zip it if you have no experience, especially on Facebook, like especially on your little social media, blah, blah, blah. Like if you are talking about something on social media, you are clearly not doing it. So enough.
I think we have time for one more. Anybody?
Sorry, don't be scared of me.
I love Ellen. So fiery. That's great. All right. Well, we have 2 minutes left. So for each one of you, I want to make sure we give you a minute to talk a little bit about how people can get involved with your organizations and how people can, help make sure that people across this country understand veterans and military communities and are connected to veterans and military communities, especially if they are not involved in veterans and military communities. I'll make a quick plug for More Perfect first, but then I want to turn it over to these guys. If you have any interest in your organization being a part of the big coalition at More Perfect that is building these democracy goals, you get to work with these two fabulous people for a little while. And our team here, we are really working to build these democracy goals in a way that is across sectors and making sure that everyone knows that they have a part to play in securing and sustaining our democracy for the next 250 years that we have. So come talk to me on the back end of this. I'd love to talk to all of you. And I want to turn it over to Ellen first, or Ryan first. You go first.
Sure. Should I zip it now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're in the game.
I'm in the game. Nice. Yeah. So it kind of, ties into, and thank you for your vulnerability on sharing about welcoming and belonging. What I wanted to share about is a national initiative we have at Blue Star Families called Blue Star Welcome Week. And September 21st through September 29th this year is Blue Star Welcome Week. And what that initiative is it's a call to the rest of America to welcome military and veteran families into your communities. So you can learn more at welcomeweek.bluestarfam.org. But I urge you to check it out because it's a great, so we have over 250 events across the country that are, bridging these civ military divides.
So I will say that the really important thing that you actually also brought up, but I think it's important for everyone to recognize, is that the military community is not a monolith. It is not all one political party. It is not all one type of people. It's not all people from one community in America. It is literally everyone. It is not necessarily a perfect reflection of society in every demographic, but it's a pretty good reflection of society. So people's assumptions about our community do need to change, because there's people from all different political backgrounds. The vast majority of veterans, actually, data shows, are independents. So I think, that's something that I think is really important for people to know when they're out in the world thinking about our community. But I will say, the only reason to go back on my statement of zipping it on social media is to share our stuff, because it's real. And we do want to get the message out to a broad swath of the American population that we are having these big numbers of people come in. We're also talking about things like we have helped grow the program Vote in Honor of a Veteran, which in many states you can register to vote using the name of someone in your family, someone you're close to who has served. And we want to remind Americans, by talking about that program, that whether or not they're in the military, family, or veteran community, or most people have someone in their life, in their family, and remembering that voting is a way of honoring that person. And after you vote, recognizing the results is another way to honor that person, because Americans did not serve overseas to face political turmoil and fighting like this at home. In America, we don't use bullets. We take out our differences at the ballot, and then we go home and we take the results and move forward. And I think every person who has served, and myself, who's been supporting someone who's served, wants America to remember that, because the alternative is not what we want our country to be.
Huge round of applause for Ryan and Ellen. And thank you guys so much for everything you're doing. Thanks all.